Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're Gen Z and you've recently stepped into the workforce, or maybe you're just about to, you're probably carrying around this heavy, quiet pressure. You did everything right, you know? You studied, you got the job, you made the leap, but somehow the math of everyday life just isn't mathing. You feel like you're doing absolutely everything you're supposed to be doing, and yet you're barely keeping your head above water. I want to tell you right out of the gate, you are not alone and your feelings are completely valid. Today, we're unpacking the generational shift in the cost of living and exploring exactly why getting ahead feels harder than it ever has before. Okay, let's dive right into this. If you look around across different cities, different countries, continents, life looks totally different on the surface. The architecture, the transit, the weather, it's all different. But beneath that surface, there is a unified, undeniable reality hooking all of us together. For millions of young people just trying to start out, life is starting to feel completely, relentlessly unaffordable. To understand why this feels so incredibly jarring, we really have to look at what we were actually promised. For the generations before us, like your parents and grandparents, there was this shared cultural belief. You study, you work, you earn, and you build a stable life, right? It was a rock-solid promise of progress. The expectation was that life would slowly get easier and more comfortable as time went on. But for a Gen Z workforce today, those old expectations are just quietly breaking. Instead of a golden staircase of steady progress, entering adulthood today feels a whole lot more like survival management. Section 1. The first signs of pressure. The math stops working. It usually hits you right around the time you get your very first paychecks. You finally secure that entry-level salary, and then the shock sets in. Rent immediately takes a massive percentage of your income because housing costs have absolutely skyrocketed while entry-level wages have barely budged. And then comes transportation. Data actually shows that commuting costs have surged, eating up to 15% of an entry-level budget. 15%. And then, of course, groceries. With food prices jumping drastically in the last few years, that tiny sliver you hope to put into monthly savings, it's wiped out entirely. The math simply stops working. So the crucial point here is this. What once felt like independence begins to feel like survival management. Think about that for a second. Getting your first real job and moving into your own place used to be the ultimate ticket to freedom. Now, instead of feeling liberated, a massive portion of the entry-level workforce literally just feels like they're frantically treading water. Section 2. Cities outgrowing their people. Development accelerates. To really understand why this squeeze is happening, we need to zoom out from our personal bank accounts. The structural causes are glaring. Cities are growing faster than ever before. Skylines are rising, global economies are expanding, and urban development is accelerating at an unbelievable pace. But there's a massive catch. Individual income, especially entry-level wages, does not rise at that same speed. So the city around you becomes hyper-advanced and glossy, while your daily life inside it becomes astronomically more expensive. Section 3. The invisible inflation effect. Quiet everyday changes. Let's see how this builds, because inflation isn't always a massive crisis headline on the evening news. Honestly, it's often more of a quiet thief. Step 1, small increases. Your regular lunch spot is suddenly $1 or $2 more expensive. Step 2, unnoticed shifts. You get a mysteriously higher utility bill that you just kind of accept and pay. And before you know it, you hit step 3, a permanent shift. Your ability to build any kind of monthly savings has basically been destroyed by 1,000 tiny cuts. Section 4, the human and emotional cost, beyond the financial. Because the cost of living isn't just financial, right? It takes a very real physical, emotional, and psychological toll. Young workers are putting in much longer hours. They're taking on extra jobs just to make rent. In fact, to put that into perspective, nearly 50% of Gen Z reports having a side hustle out of pure necessity. 50%. They're being forced to reduce their life expectations and deal with a crushing amount of daily pressure. I want to emphasize this heavily. This widespread exhaustion isn't happening because this generation lacks ambition. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. It's a forced survival response to an incredibly hostile financial landscape. And all of this creates a massive chain reaction on your life path. You enter the workforce in the present, but because of stagnant wages and high costs, buying a home gets pushed way, way back. Because of that housing delay, starting a family gets delayed even further. And ultimately, that dream of total financial independence, it begins to feel entirely out of reach. The traditional life milestones that older generations casually hit in their 20s are being pushed way out into the distant future for today's young adults. Section 5. A global and affordable reality, worldwide pressure. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, well, this is just a local problem in my specific town, let's zoom out to the widest possible perspective. Yes, for sure, there are surface differences across the globe. Whether you're in Jakarta, Manila, London, or New York, you've got different currencies, different governments, and entirely different economic systems. But the shared reality is identical everywhere you go. Rapid urban development, soaring financial pressure on everyday life, and a universal shared feeling among young people of falling behind despite working incredibly hard. Stability is no longer assumed, it is something to constantly maintain. A comfortable life used to be viewed as a given rite of passage. You get the job, you get the stability. Now, it's an endless treadmill. It's this quiet emotional transformation where you realize you can never really stop running because stability is no longer a guaranteed destination. It's a delicate balance you have to fight to maintain every single day. The future no longer feels like something ahead, but something just out of reach. That is the core emotional transformation happening for the modern entry-level workforce. If you've been feeling this deep anxiety, looking at your bank account, looking at the cost of rent, and wondering why it's so incredibly hard to just get a foothold, your feelings are entirely justified. The economic structure has literally shifted beneath your feet. Now, what's really interesting here is this final question. If life continues to become more expensive everywhere, across every system, what does a normal life even mean anymore? And as we look to the future, who is a normal life still within reach for? It's a massive societal shift that is completely redefining what it means to grow up and build a life today. Keep asking these hard questions, keep examining the systems around you, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.